Good morning, everyone. Welcome to you all. And let me just give you a little bit of context to this morning. I am talking about marketing, of course, but I'm not talking about the newest innovations in AI and stuff like that, because there's lots of people who can talk about that and educate you on that. I'm here to talk about the basics, the fundamentals that the team and I keep seeing businesses getting wrong. So if you're here for some high-tech advice, no, I'm here to make sure the basics of marketing are being done in your business. And what my team and I constantly see is that's not happening in many, many businesses. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to share, I think I've got a list of about 10 or so common mistakes that we see when we're coaching the owners that we're seeing. And this is practical stuff. So this is based on the observations that we are directly seeing in the businesses that we know. And I just start with, I like to share my vision, really. This is the vision I came up with about 15, 16 years ago, that we believe most owners are not just running their business because they want to survive and make a basic living. They have a dream, and usually the dream is around two things: growing their business so they can grow their financial situation, both in the business and personally, of course, so they can create wealth for themselves and their family. And secondly, to have more of a life, or to have the life they always dreamed of or conceived of. They're the two visions that we typically hear from people. And how do we do that? Well, that's what I outlined in a webinar a few weeks ago. In fact, it was the end of April, my reset webinar. This is our business operating system on the screen here. And I'm not going to go through this today because I went through this in my reset session at the end of April. It's on YouTube, guys. So if any of you want a refresh on our business operating system and how we embed this into a business, there is a whole hour where I went through this in that reset session. So if anyone needs the link, just email me or one of the team afterwards. We can share that with you. It's publicly available on YouTube. But now what I'm going to do is do a deep dive into some of the areas of our operating system that we know people want help with. And one of those, of course, is marketing, and specifically how you're going to grow your business and where is it maybe not going to plan for you. So let's get straight into it, guys, and talk about some of those issues. So mistake number one. Let's have a look at this. Oh gosh, I don't paint that right. So this is no particular order, but the mindset, first of all, the mindset. Now, very, very commonly, we see that most people running a business are what we call technicians. So the engineer who spent all those years studying engineering, starts an engineering practice, the hairdressing person who starts a salon, those guys will default to what they know and love the most, which is engineering, cutting hair. You get the analogy. Now, the challenge with that mindset is that marketing is a bit of an afterthought for the technician because it's not what they love. It's not what they know. And so the marketing tends to get done, well, most of the time, only when it needs to be done, i.e. you need more work. And that is the wrong mindset. Because, of course, for the commercial reasons that you need to generate consistent clients and consistent cash flow, the technician tends not to do that. And what we see with that mindset is what we call the blame, the excuses, and the denial, the victim mindsets. In other words, well, we're not doing so well at the moment because the economy's tough, or because the regulations have changed, or because there's more competition, and all of those, I suppose, excuses. And the fact is, yes, they're all realities of running a business. And I'm sure you've got your own excuses, guys, that maybe you've used. But the challenge is the technician will default to excuses. That the true entrepreneurial mindset, and I see this very, very clear in people who've got that mindset, they approach marketing very, very differently. They put marketing front and center in their business. So they're not blaming the economy or the competition. They're saying, well, look, if we haven't got the leads that we need or the clients that we should have, it's because there's something wrong with our marketing. And they are very much having that mindset of self-ownership and self-responsibility for generating the levels of leads and clients that they know they need. So it's a mindset. And I just want you to think about whether you default to technician behaviors or whether you default to having a much more marketing mindset and putting marketing front and center. Most people, it's the technician's mindset. Understandably, because that's who you were when you started your business. The challenge is you're not just a technician anymore. You're also a business owner by default. So it needs both of those mindsets to be present. Otherwise, marketing is always going to be neglected or an afterthought. Now, linked to that issue is perfectionism. So this one really, really, yeah, I have to grind my teeth when I see this. Oh, Parag, we're getting a new website done. Great, great. And it's not quite ready yet because we're on the 16th iteration of the copy and the images, and it's just going to take another few months. Oh, and by the way, we've got a holding page because we don't want anyone to see our old website because that's not perfect. So let's put a holding page up so nobody can find us, nobody can see us. We'll just delay it for another 6 months while we over perfect the thing. And then it'll be ready at some point in the future. Ditto videos. Like I'm hoping some of you embracing video and other forms of content, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But, oh no, that video, let's shoot it again. Let's do it again. The light wasn't quite right. Oh, I slightly stumbled on that word. No, let's do that again as well. Let's spend another hour that I don't have getting the video perfect. Oh, yes, no, I'm still not happy. Maybe I'll have to come back to it another day. Oh, I don't have another day. Maybe it will slip. Some of you maybe can recognize that in yourself. In fact, I feel so strongly about this. Some of you may have seen my LinkedIn video. I did the most imperfect video you'll ever see. I shot that one a few months ago, and I was at a conference with some of you actually, and I just grabbed the phone, stuck it in my face, and said, "Here's the most imperfect video you'll ever see." And I just shot it. It took about 40 seconds, and it was live on LinkedIn in a minute. It got tremendous engagement because actually the world has, and I used to be the perfectionist about marketing 10 years ago. The world has moved on. It's not what marketing needs and requires anymore. The perfectionism is coming from yourself, not from the external market. So if that's an issue for you, first of all, it's acknowledging and recognizing that and looking at how you might overcome that and using certain tools to overcome that as well. There are tools, but this might help as well. This is the law of diminishing returns, which is where the perfectionists fall down. Certainly the non-perfectionists will tend to get a marketing task done where that first crosses. So it's what I call roughly right. It's good enough. Let's get it out. The perfectionist, however, will sweat on it and go to the second cross where the output might be slightly better. Yes, but look at the extra time they've put in to getting a 5 or 10% better result. And actually the perfectionist tends not to stop there. They'll tend to keep reiterating and re-elaborating to the point where you get negative returns, i.e. there's no improvement at all. In fact, you're making it worse. And you're spending considerably more time on whatever it is you were doing. So that's just it's a common trait we see in certain people, when they're trying to get their marketing out the door and then wondering why things are taking so long. Marketing is a lot of good marketing is around speed, especially in a small business. Most of us don't have time to waste delaying our lead generation. We don't have that luxury. Okay. Now, third thing I want to talk about. So, no plan. How many of you have got any kind of written marketing plan? Now, you may or may not want to admit that here in public, but I'm willing to guess it's not many of you. Now, I'm going to say something slightly controversial here, which is most professional coaches or consultants would say you need a well thought through, thoroughly documented plan. And I would totally agree with them. But I'm going to say something controversial here. The reason we see most people don't have any kind of plan is because of the time, the energy, and often the money required to create it. So I'm going to suggest something different. That if you've got a plan that you've invested time and money in, fantastic. If you don't spend 6 months trying to create the perfect plan, because you're going to kill your business by then. So I'm a big fan of what I call simple, practical, rough and ready plans, which often when we're coaching people can be done in an hour or less. And what would I expect to see? Just some basic things. Who is your target audience? Do you have a clear definition of your target audience? I'm going to talk about some of these points more this morning. Who's your target audience? Why would they buy from you? Why? What's your selling point, your value proposition? That is a huge issue in marketing. Most businesses aren't really talking about their value, and if they are, it's vague, it's woolly, it's generic. And then they wonder why people either aren't buying or aren't buying at the prices or the fees that you're setting. It's because the value hasn't been communicated well enough or specifically enough. So that needs to be a cornerstone of your marketing. How are you going to get your marketing messages out there to your target audience? Which channels are you going to be using? That needs to be documented. Who is responsible for doing that? Who is responsible for getting the marketing out to the various, whichever marketing strategies you're using? Who has that responsibility? Now, it might be in some of your businesses. I know some of your businesses are small, i.e. 1 or 2 people. So that responsibility might just be you. Some of you have got bigger organizations of 10, 20, 30 people. So that responsibility might be spread across multiple directors, other team members, marketing agencies, marketing in-house. But there needs to be clear responsibility. Who is responsible for the LinkedIn post? Who is responsible for making sure our newsletter goes out every week? Who? And finally, what's the outcome that you want from your marketing? Now, more clients is not an outcome. The objective of your marketing is obviously leads, inquiries. So how many leads are you actually aiming to achieve every month, every quarter? There should be a number that you are tracking. So you can see, it doesn't matter what activity you're doing. It doesn't matter how many likes it gets on a platform. What matters is how many leads are coming from those activities. So you should have a target number of leads per month, and you should know whether every month you're achieving that or behind or ahead even. So if you're looking for a shortcut plan, guys, if I can save you 6 months of faffing around trying to write one and a beautiful 50-page document, Nothing wrong with that. But if you want to save 6 months, why not go and do this instead? And as ever, when I'm doing these webinars, I would advocate you take at least one thing away that you can go away and take away and actually do after this. And this may be one of those for you. This may be an activity. I'm going to share lots of others. But if you want to save yourself some time, this could be a great exercise for you. Now, the next mistake that we've identified, bright, shiny objects. Bright, shiny objects. So who are my people here? The newest trend, the newest fad comes out in marketing. Maybe you've got somebody in your network who's doing something new and you're like, oh, I like the sound of that. I'll give you an example. I remember a few years ago, Clubhouse. Does anyone remember Clubhouse? And I was sat there, I think it was a Sunday. I was on a Sunday at home with the family, doing my Sunday thing. And I get 3 messages, 2 from 2 business owners we're coaching, 1 from another coach. So, and they all said the same thing. Hey, have you joined Clubhouse? I've joined it. I'm really excited. I think it will be really good for you. Now, first thought was, what the hell are they doing on a Sunday looking at Clubhouse? And secondly, there was no evidence that this platform works. They didn't know how it works because it was new. But because it was new, they thought, oh, I've got to jump on that bandwagon. Now, I don't know what happened to Clubhouse. I don't think it really exists anymore. But whether it was a good idea or not, those kind of people tend to get easily distracted by the next new thing. And again, if that's you, if you recognize that in yourself, I want you to go back to my previous point about the plan. The whole point of having a plan is to execute the plan diligently, consistently, not to chop and change and add things. And I mean, if you want to add things because you're convinced it's a good thing, then you have to work out what you're going to stop doing. Because you can't add things and then not stop the other stuff and then run out of time and then nothing gets done properly. Surely it makes more sense to stick with what you're doing, be consistent, refine it, improve it, and get those results rather than jumping on shiny objects. And we do see that in certain entrepreneurs. May not apply to you, but it certainly applies to some people. Okay. Now, the next one's a big one. This one, I suspect, does apply to many, many of you. Lack of fuel for growth. Now, we often ask people this question. So what are your growth ambitions? That's a typical question we ask over the next couple of years. And maybe you've got a growth ambition. Is it 20%? I mean, most of the people we support are ambitious. They don't want to grow at 20% over the next 3 to 5 years. They want to grow 50% or more. Some want to double. In fact, some want to do more than double. Some, I hear some enormous growth aspirations. And there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. But then we ask them a second question. How will that growth be achieved? That's a coaching question we ask. How will you tell me how that growth will be achieved? And that's where we will start to see the vagueness, the lack of plan, the unfounded optimism, the lack of clarity. We've got a really good network, Parag. Yes, we're going to do lots of networking. Great, but fine. But that's one thing. That's one thing. I always say, if you want to drive at the speed of a Ferrari, you need more fuel. And marketing, actually, most marketing results are an outcome of the activity levels that are going into it. And you think about the companies that are most visible in our world, your big companies, your big corporates. How do you think they became big companies? Because they understood that to become bigger, they have to put more fuel in the tank, i.e., they have to do more marketing. In fact, one of my early mentors was a former director at McDonald's. And he said to me, their marketing strategy was simple. We're going to outmarket the competition. That was their marketing strategy. We're just going to do more marketing. And it kind of worked, actually. Growing your business is not necessarily about being the best at what you do. I'm afraid there's plenty of companies that are really, really good at what they do. In fact, I'm looking at some of them now. Really good at what they do, but not getting the results because they're being outmarketed, i.e., their activity levels are not high enough. And I remember when I started my business 18 years ago, it was just me sat in my living room, no clients, no network, no money. And my coach got me to record my activity levels. How many, there was no social media or any of that stuff in those days. It was all face to face. How many networking events, how many public speaking gigs, how many follow-up phone calls. I actually had to record this every week, my activity levels. And even when I had no clients, I had 50 hours a week just to do marketing. And my activity levels were still not as high as I thought they were. And in fact, I did this with there's an engineering practice we've been coaching now for 7 years. And he said, yeah, actually, Parag, we've got this enormous network. It's brilliant. We can really grow our business on the back of that network that we spent 20 years developing. I said, fantastic. Fantastic. So how much of that network are you tapping into? So I got him to measure how many meetings he was having with his network. And this was in 2023. And I remember it was just over 2. It was 2.3 meetings a month. And I said, is that enough? He goes, no. He goes, I didn't realize it was so low. And so he set himself a new target, start 2024, 12 meetings a month with his network. That was the activity target he essentially set for himself. And he's actually achieved that target every month or exceeded it since January 2024. As a result, his pipeline now is bigger than it has ever been in the history of his 22-year-old business. It was a reflection of his activity levels. So if you want to grow, you have to identify the activity levels that you need to be performing. And you can't be relying on 1 or 2 strategies. It's not enough. We would advocate minimum 3. Minimum of 3, because if 1 or 2 of them don't work that month, where are you getting your leads from? Minimum 3, ideally 10, guys. The businesses we're coaching who are growing up faster are just doing more marketing. Fact. And yes, that requires investment of time and or money. Yep. But they get that because they want more fuel for growth. If you can't invest that amount, then fine, but identify the 3 at least that you can focus on. And yes, referrals can be one of them. I'll come on to referrals in a minute. Referrals can be one, but identify the activity required. I do LinkedIn. That's the only marketing I do in my team. I have a 3-hour week budget for LinkedIn. My team do all the rest of our marketing. I don't know what they do online, all that stuff. It's all done by my team. I do LinkedIn. And I know a lot of you do as well. I know from my research on LinkedIn, which is freely available on Google, that you need to be posting 3 to 5 times a week to get any kind of traction. Is that what most businesses are doing? Not even close. So the activity level doesn't match the ambition. Doesn't even come close. So we need that fuel in the tank, guys. We need that minimum 3 strategies. Otherwise, you're running on empty and wondering why you're not growing. So that could be one of your activities is which are the marketing strategies that you're going to be using in your business consistently. There is the other key word here. Consistency. And maybe this comes back to my point earlier about bright, shiny objects. What we see with most businesses is their marketing is woefully inconsistent because it tends to be a reflection of how much time, energy they can put into it. And so you get inconsistency in marketing activity. This is my high-tech diagram of what we see in terms of activity levels. I'm sure you can appreciate the technical skill that's gone into this picture. Because the activity levels are up, typically when you need more work, and then they go down again, and then they go up. Now, if you think about your business and why it may or may not be growing consistently year in, year out, it's a reflection of the inconsistent activity, which then leads to inconsistent lead flow, which then leads to inconsistent customer acquisition. And if all of that is inconsistent, you can't expect to consistently grow a business. It's up one year, it's flat the next, down the next, up another, it's up and down, just like this line. That's the typical small business marketing. So consistency is the bedrock. We need those minimum 3 strategies consistently done. In fact, for those we coach, we created a little WhatsApp group for those who were using LinkedIn. We said, right, guys, we're going to set you a little challenge. Join this WhatsApp group if you want to post once a week on LinkedIn. That's just once. Join the group and share your post every week. Tell us what you've posted every week. And there's about 25, 30 business owners on there. And how many of those have managed to post consistently once a week? Once a week. And I'll tell you how many. 2. Me and my colleague Dan in my team. There's 1 or 2 others who were close, but I'm afraid they haven't managed it. Once a week. They haven't managed it for the last year. If you want results marketing with your marketing, you have to be consistent. And I know, oh, but it's not working, Parag. Oh, you've only been doing it for 3 months. Oh, but yeah, we're not getting the leads, But there's no consistency. And maybe you're too busy looking over your shoulder and thinking that somebody else is getting great results and why aren't I doing that instead, and jumping around and actually it's about consistency. Those that we've seen who are getting the results with leads, with new customers, new clients, and actually growing their businesses are rigorously consistent. And the upside, actually, because some of you are like, oh God, no, how am I going to get time to do that? But I've got this diagram. This is from James Clear's Atomic Habits. I know some of you will be familiar with this chart, the aggregation of marginal gains, of course. And this is something to bear in mind when you're looking at how to grow a business, is that those consistent actions don't yield instant results. Now, I think this is a big issue for most people. You won't see the results quickly. But if you are consistent over time, and that time for me, I'm talking about years, really. Every expert, for example, on LinkedIn has talked about years, not months. Every expert on website performance, in fact, even in our own business, it took years to get consistent leads, not months. But slowly, those small improvements in consistency, in content, in engagement, those small improvements add up if there is time. And this is all explained by James Clear in his book. I mean, look, this concept's been shared a lot as well about marginal gains, but it requires consistency. And when people ask me, actually, I have fellow coaches ask me, how have you done this, Parag? How have you built your business over 18 years when most coaches have frankly struggled? I go back to this concept: consistency and marginal gains. In my book, there's no quick wins. There's fads, there's improvements, yes. but there's no substitute for consistency. And if you're not consistent, you need to look at what you can do to build consistency with whatever marketing channels you are using. That's my challenge to everyone here. Oh, right. Next one. Differentiate or die. Well, that's a bit bleak, isn't it, Parag? So let me give you an example. In fact, let me ask you this. We've got all sorts of industries on this call today. I know all sorts of different industries. Have you ever Googled your top 10 competitors and looked at what they've written on their website, on their homepage about their business and compared it to yours? Now, I've done this lots of times with different industries. Accountants. Let me describe the typical accountant website. Hello, we are XYZ accountants. We are professionally chartered or certified accountants. We do bookkeeping, we do payroll, we do management accounts, we do VAT. Just like every other damn accountant on planet Earth. How can you expect anyone to understand your value and why they should buy from you if you look and sound exactly like everyone else? And by the way, I don't think we've got any accounts on this call, but that's a massive issue in their industry, by the way. Their industry is rapidly becoming commoditized. Their fees are only going one way. They're in big danger, really, the whole industry. Because of this issue, they can't articulate why them, why they're different, what's their value. And this happens this has happened in the history of business over the last 80, 90 years. So many industries have consolidated, i.e. the small players have got eaten up by the big players. I used to work for the biggest accountancy firm in the world, PwC. The top four firms own 80 to 90% of the whole global market. So everyone else is just fishing for the scraps. Because they weren't able to differentiate, the big guys were able to set themselves apart. They took over. Happens in most industries. Now, if you are able to do this, though, just imagine, actually, if you created a niche for yourself, you differentiated and created a niche, i.e. something that you were known for that's different, specialized, less generic, and you became that person. Imagine what that would do to the fees, the prices you could charge, the margins you would make, the kind of people you could attract, the sale value you could demand if you sold your business, if you were much more niche and nuanced. Imagine what that might do. Because if you're swimming in a pond that is occupied by everyone else in your industry, you are in danger of being seen just as a commodity supplier. So, differentiate or die. I took that from, some of you recognize that from Seth Godin's book, Purple Cow. Look different or suffer the consequences financially. Okay. Right, let's keep going. We've got 9 minutes. Right. Short versus long-term marketing. When you're looking at your marketing plans, guys, for those of you who got them, how many of your strategies are long-term versus short-term? Long-term, stuff that takes 6, 12 months or more to gain traction, i.e. to get results, which is probably most social media channels, definitely SEO. Those kind of strategies are long-term strategies. Great. But if they're not balanced with short-term strategies, what do you think is going to happen to your lead flow? If it's all long-term, no short-term, you're going to have no leads. So you need to look at the balance in your plan between short and long-term. What's my favorite short-term strategy? I thought you're all thinking, what's a short-term strategy, Parag? What's my favorite short-term strategy? Pick up the damn phone, call a customer, and ask them 2 things. Would you like to buy from us again? sorry, next customer, would you like to buy from us again? Or who do you know who would like to? I remember there was a tailoring business I coached years and years and years ago, and she'd run out of leads, she'd run out of money. She's like, Parag, help, help. And that's exactly what I got her to do. Exactly what I got her to do. In 1 month, she turned her business around. 14 years later, she's thriving. She's gone on and done loads of cool stuff with investing and that. But she was 1 month away from bankruptcy because she wasn't doing the short-term stuff. So just consider that when you look at your plans. Have you got the balance right? I talked about referrals. There is a delusion around referrals. I'm sure all of you get referrals because you're good at what you do. Of course you are. That's a given. That's a given. That's not something to be proud of. Why? Because a lot of owners become deluded by, oh, but it's okay, Parag, we're getting referrals. We're good. No, you're not good. Number one, you're relying on one strategy. So what if that strategy doesn't work that month? What if you've got happy clients, but they just don't happen to refer you that month? Where are you getting your leads from? Referrals are sporadic and they're out of your control. And do you really want the future growth of your business and success of your business to be reliant on something that's out of your control? Of course, you should be getting referrals. Of course, you should be prompting referrals, but you can't rely on referrals. That's a delusion. It's a fallacy, and it's incredibly risky. It's just an excuse for not doing the other stuff. If you're being honest with yourselves, guys, for some of you anyway. And you look at the typical growth of a business, actually. Let me prove this to you. And what happens, what is it? 240,000 businesses in the UK get to 1 million plus. 240, it's about 4.5%. That was the latest stat I saw. It's probably about 6 months out of date, that stat. Give or take, it's around 5% of UK businesses. Now, whether you're at 1 million or less than 1 million or more than 1 million, it doesn't matter. Because what matters is the right side of that graph. What happens to most UK businesses? They grow for a while, then it stagnates, and then it goes down, and then they die. That is a statistical fact. Then there is a minority, a small minority, mind you, that continue to grow. And why? That's the question. The difference is many reasons, but one of those is the marketing is not just driven by one person based on the relationships they have and the referrals that they're getting. The marketing is much more systemized, it's much more planned, it's much more methodical, it's not based on one person's connections and referrals. That is very, very risky. In fact, I would say if you're doing that and you want to survive, you are doing two things there that are conflicting. You might, but Parag, we're doing all right. Great. I'm talking about the next 10 years. It's risky. And if you look at the stats on UK business failures, most will fail. Depressing and true. So please don't rely on one strategy, especially if it's just referrals. Have that to back up. Next one. Lack of trust. Now, an interesting thing has been going on with marketing and buying behaviors generally, especially post-COVID. We're seeing this even in our business. We're seeing this in most of the businesses we coach. The sales cycles are getting longer. Most buyers are doing more due diligence on you, on us. And what does that really mean? They're looking for more evidence to trust you, to buy from you. And one of the things that can help you build that trust is your content. Now, I've been sharing this slide for more than 10 years about content marketing. Content marketing, there's nothing new. Content marketing is a great way of building trust. As long as it's useful, it's not just, hello, buy from us. It has to be useful content, valuable to your audience, helpful, authentic, not some drivel. as long as it's useful, it's a great way of building trust. But I go back to my point earlier about activity levels and consistency. Are you doing that consistently? Is there anything going out there that's going to help build trust? And in fact, I was at a talk with Dan Priestley a few months ago, and Dan Priestley talks about the research from Google that said that typically now a buyer needs around 11 hours of engagement with you, your company, your materials, your marketing, in order to build sufficient trust to buy. Are your buyers being exposed to 11 hours or more of you and your content and the information that you can provide? For most businesses, it's not even close. And therefore, there's a lack of trust. If there's a lack of trust and they can't do their due diligence on you, they're not going to buy. Or they're going to beat you down on price. Now, linked to that trust, social proof. Social proof is a term from psychology. It's in Robert Cialdini's book, actually, Influence. Talks about the power of social proof. In other words, as human beings, we tend to follow the crowd when it comes to making decisions. We tend to do what other people have done. When we're on holiday, we tend to go to the places that are popular, the places that we know, the places we trust, the places that other people are going to. It's the same when we're making decisions in business. Do you have social proof that you are credible and trustworthy and that other people think you're trustworthy and credible? How do you do that? Reviews, ratings. For example, Google reviews. This is our Google reviews page for our business. I think actually we're now over 100 5-star Google reviews. But think about this. Are your prospects checking you out on Google and looking at this stuff? And if you don't think they are, oh, Parag, they don't do stuff like that in our industry. No, no, no. I mean, that's utter, people have said that to me. It's utter delusion. If you don't think people are checking you out online, you are deluded. Of course they're checking you out online. Why the hell wouldn't they? So whether it's Google reviews or whatever platform that might be appropriate to your business, reviews, testimonials, case studies, videos, all that evidence that will build trust. Does any of it exist? If you don't build trust, don't expect people to buy. They need to feel that trust. I know I've said this, those of you who've been on these events, I've said this so many times. And we're almost at the end now. Other point, performance data. If you think about professional athletes, they're always looking at their data. They're always looking at how they can improve. And it should be the same with your marketing. Do you have any kind of performance data on how much marketing have you done? How many leads have you generated? Is any of that being measured? Because actually, most marketing doesn't work, guys, or certainly not initially. So you shouldn't be sitting there going, well, it doesn't work. You should be sitting there going, well, are we measuring the results? Are we measuring how much activity, how many leads, how much engagement, which strategies are getting which levels of engagement? Are you measuring any of that so you can make informed decisions, logical decisions about what to do and what to stop? And even some of that basic data you should have at your fingertips so you can make those decisions. You can decide what to do more of, what to improve, what to let go of, based on some basic data that can be just tracked in a simple spreadsheet if you have to. It doesn't matter. Just some basic information. And my final point, lack of accountability. Because we know that most businesses, it's the owner or owners that are doing most of the marketing. Who are you accountable to for doing that stuff? Who's your boss who's going to ask you, did you do that LinkedIn post? Has that email gone out? Is that video live? Who's holding you to account for doing that stuff? And of course, it's nobody. So some of you, well, there's that rare individual that's got high levels of self-accountability, but most people don't. which is why we provide that accountability for people who need that, to make sure they've got the plan, but they actually execute. See, knowledge is abundant. Knowledge cannot be an excuse for not being good at marketing, by the way. The knowledge that you need on marketing is abundant. It's called the internet. All the knowledge you need is out there. The issue is whether the execution follows from that knowledge. And part of that is having a plan and having accountability. So I told you this would be intense and fast. They're my top 10. They're my top 10. So my call to action now is very simple. Write down one, or if you can think you can do more than one, that's great. Don't do 8, because you won't do 8. I'd rather you did 1 or 2 and actually got it done and made those changes in your business. Pick 1 or 2 straight after this webinar ends. Don't start looking at your emails. Just pick 1 or 2 now, please. If you want some help and talk to us about what I've covered here, message me on LinkedIn, or my email address is there. We can set up a chat to do that. But please, please, please take some action. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. That's obvious, but most people will not take action. They'll default to their standard behaviors. So take that time immediately after this webinar. If you want to chat, that's great, about how to do this. That's fantastic. If not, take the action. I will see you. Thank you, David. You got some actions. Marvelous. Yeah, please just do that. And I will see you next time, guys. Thank you so much.